Cable TV.
And we're back. Thank you guys for joining me again for another Adobe Illustrator tutorial. This is Will Focus, and today we are going to bring to you another quick tip. And today's quick tip is going to be about Dracula. Now, this is all in the spirit of the holiday season that is coming up. If you were with us in the last tutorial, we did Frankenstein, so we are going to follow a similar pattern and develop Dracula. Now, for anybody who's been with us and they studied that last tutorial, they know the first thing we do is we research and we get us a picture we feel best describes the character we are trying to illustrate. Now, we're going for a cartoon version, so what we're going to do is just find out the major features or attributes of the character that we're going to keep that'll keep it in line with their actual look. The first thing we want to do is grab our picture. I have mine here. And then we're going to look at the features that are synonymous with that character. And for Dracula, we have to take into consideration his hair, his eyebrows, which to me are a major part because they give off the sinister look, as well as combined with his eyes, in addition to his lips, which are very thin and or dark. And then his face is very, very angular and slim. The last thing that you always want to keep in and take into consideration is the actual extension of his collar for his cape that he has in the back. And that coming up actually gives off the major effect of Dracula. Even though we can add fangs, we're going to do this Dracula with mouth closed. And if we decide to add fangs, we can, just add them in as a little thing afterwards. Again, similar to Frankenstein, we're just going to do the head. We're not going to do the rest of the body, so I'm only concerned with features that are in the face. So the hair, eyebrows, and eyes, the length and size of the face, the darker lips, and then you just want to take into consideration how angular he is in terms of his features. They're very sharp, very slim, almost the exact opposite of Frankenstein. So let's get started. I'm actually going to utilize a triangle to start the development of this character because of the angle of his head. It's almost trapezoidal in shape. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to use a rectangle instead of a triangle. And remember, I'm doing these things from scratch, and this is going to be the same way that I analyze stuff. I'm just taking it a little slower so that you can understand what it is that I'm doing. So I'm going to grab a rectangle. Unlike the Frankenstein, I'm just grabbing a regular rectangle. All right, I'm going to bring that on the stage. I'm going to make sure I have a stroke. I'm going to get rid of the fill. And again, if you can't keep up with these, remember, I'm not going to be discussing the functions of the tools. The tools themselves I have tutorials for, and you can look for those in the Learn to Use tutorials. They are represented by the orange thumbnails with the white icons. Also the practical use tutorials, which are more of the violet thumbnails with the white icons. And then that way you can come over into these quick tips and start developing your artwork. So be sure to check those out if you have any issues with any of the tools that you may hear me say I'm going to use. So right now we're in the shape tool and we're using the rectangle. I've already gotten rid of the fill. Now I want to increase the stroke size to, again, something we can see. So I'm putting it up to 10. Let me increase the size here. Now I want to change the bottom portion so that it's very, very slim around the chin area. I'm going to leave the top portion the same. So let's go to the scale tool. Let's go to non-uniform. And let's see. I think 40%, let's go to, 40% works. Let's click off Scale Strokes and Effects just for future reference and click OK. Now, I'm going to actually change the size of this height-wise, and I'm going to bring it down a little using the E key. Let's make sure the whole thing is selected. And bring that down. And now that we have the shape a little bit shorter in its height, I'm going to think about the features and where they lie. Now, Dracula's eyes, he's almost the opposite, again, of Frankenstein. He's not looking like you're looking up at him, but he almost has an angled down expression in everything because he seems to be more sinister. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my pen tool and I'm just going to make quick marks to where I feel his features should be. So those are going to be the eyes and eyebrows. We're going to get the nose here. And then maybe because the mouth isn't so angled, but isn't so far above the chin, because he doesn't have a really large chin like Frankenstein does, we're going to put it here. So these are going to be our indicators on where everything lies. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to mark out where the hair is actually going to be. And let's, similar to the eyebrows, let's do that. So if you remember before, I was speaking on how you were able to even out these anchor points and or make it so that you can distribute the middle anchor point to the center. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to grab every piece that I have. I'm going to add an extra point just so that I can center these items. Right now I'm just aligning these to the top so that these points are all aligned to one another. So that the reference point is proper. Then I'm going to select the 3 points. And then distribute, after selecting align to selection, distribute to the middle so that way it's centered. And I'm going to do that for each portion that I have. Just those 3 points, because those are the ones that I want to keep in mind. Same for these 3. All right. Then I'm going to get rid of the last point on each one. And then I'm going to make sure I align all of these to the center of the artboard. So now they're directly even and in line with each other. Okay, so now that we have these little marks and we know where everything is supposed to be, we can start creating our Dracula's features. So as is, we have a very trapezoid shaped face. I want to actually structure the face where the jaw comes out a little bit and then goes up. So I want marks that are going to be somewhere around here in terms of the jaw, and then I'm going to reduce the size of the chin itself. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to Command or Control R and bring out my ruler, and I'm going to drag it down to the point that I want to mark where the jawline is going to start. And I'm going to let it go. I'm then going to hit my plus button on my keyboard, and then I'm going to add points to each area where I want that chin to be, or that jawline to start. And I'm just going to shift and click my left and right arrow keys to drag in and out. And then I'm going to reduce the profile of the jaw by clicking shift and clicking in and out left or right to reduce that point as well. So now you see we have a more angled jaw, and it actually goes in line with the head itself. Now the head does round out, so what we're going to do is we're going to click a point in the center of the top of the head, and similar to how we aligned everything before, we're going to select these points, go to Align to Selection, and distribute that to the middle. And then we're going to use the Convert Anchor Point tool, and we're going to drag out some handles, pull this up just a little bit to round out the head, and then we want to round out these sides as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another ruler, and I'm going to pull that down just about here. And I'm going to drag a handle up and down on each side, holding the Shift key, so that it touches that point. Same thing over here. So that way we have a more rounded head. And if you want to bring that up any more, you can always, click that point that's in the middle that we created and round it up. So now you'll start to see more of the shape of the face. I'm going to hit Command semicolon and get rid of the rulers guides, so that way we can just look at the piece itself. Now that we know this is just an indicator for where the actual brow is going to be, we can turn our ruler back on, and we're going to drag another line down to where we want the end of the eyebrows to be and the beginning of the eyebrows to be. So I want them to start and stop here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the C button, and I'm going to use this scissor tool to cut at each point on the line. So we have our second point here, and then we're just going to continue to do the same thing as we go over. And then we can get rid of the excess pieces that we had. And we'll have the eyebrow areas. Now they're not as is even, and if you want them to be even, let's get rid of the guides. We can select one, delete that, go here, and we can drag out a guideline to be in the center of the illustration. We can turn our guide back on, and then we can use our reflect tool just to place our reflection point, and then shift click and hold that down. And then, you know, if it wasn't directly centered, we can just drag and adjust accordingly so that we have it in place. And then we can get rid of our guide, and then we can start from there. Now, I want to bring down Dracula's hairline just a tad. We can keep it at these points, but I'm going to bring it in, shift click over once, shift click down once. Actually, I want it to stay up, so I'm going to shift click back up and shift click over again. So over 2 times. And then I'm going to have that line come off to the side and around the head. And at this point, this is when we can start to change how we actually allow the symmetry to be in our piece, so that it's not 100% structured identical on each side. We can get it close, but we can also change it so that we're not worried about how identical each side is looking. So we're going to leave it here. Now, right now we have the head, and we know where the nose is going to be, and we can pick the nose up just a little bit. We can also cut edges off the nose area so that it's just a little bit smaller. And let's get rid of the excess again. And we can drag this down to where we feel it's just about even with the other side. Okay, so now we got eyes and eyebrows, nose and mouth. So similar to Frankenstein, we're going to start to work with various profiles for our strokes and changing the weight. So I'm going to grab all of these except for the outside part of the face, and I'm going to change the size of them. Now note, this line here is only representing the middle section of the mouth. So I'm going to reduce these down, and then I'm going to change their profile to the width profile number 1, which then gives me more of an angle. His eyebrows are very, very bushy, so I'm going to leave these 2 marks here as the eyebrows, but I'm also going to drag down and copy 2 more marks. And these 2 marks are going to be represented or representing the eyes. So I'm going to grab the 2 that were up above. I'm going to increase their weight so that they look more like eyebrows, and I'm going to change their profile and reduce it just a little bit. And let's get this down just a little bit more. And then what I'm going to do is expand these. So go to Object, Expand Appearance, and then I'm going to change how complex the pattern is. So I'm going to go to Path, Simplify, and then keep the curve precision up, and you'll look, the original points will be at 1 set of numbers, and right now the current will be at 34 for me, which means that I'm going to get a significant amount less in terms of anchor points, which is good so that it's not as complex if I decide to alter or warp these. So I click OK. I'm then going to go to Effect, Distort and Transform. I'm going to go to Roughen, just like I did for Frankenstein's hair. I'm going to click Preview, and I'm going to increase the detail, but I'm going to click on Absolute, and I'm going to make the size increase a little bit, and I want it to be smooth, and I'm going to click OK and click off just to get a different look for his eyebrows. Now I can change this at any time by going in to my Appearance menu. If I go into my Appearance menu and I were to go down, you'll notice that with the object selected, there's a roughen feature, and I can click that, and I can change, by clicking Preview, I can change the level of detail that's actually on this, as well as the size. So I'm going to go to 0.06 inches and 3 per inch for size and detail respectively, and click OK. I'm going to do the same thing for the other eyebrow, 0.06 and 3 respectively, and click OK. And then I'll leave those like that for now. If I decide to change it, then I'll be able to change it accordingly. So now I can make the eyes. Now for his eyes, I want his eyes to be more angled. So I'm actually going to click these points and give him more of an angled aspect to his eye. And I'm going to change the width profile back to its original uniform stuff, and then I'm going to reduce the size of the actual stroke itself so that I have an eye that looks like this. I'm then going to get rid of the other one because I don't need to do the same thing on the other side, and I'm going to turn my guides back on, select that eye, hit the letter O, and reflect it across this axis. That way I now have my two eyes. I'm going to increase, actually what I want to do is I want to get rid of this eyebrow. I actually like the shape of this one. I'm going to expand that so that it takes on the roughened appearance. Increase that size. And then I'm going to duplicate that same eyebrow by hitting the letter O and reflecting it, hitting the Alt key and holding the Shift key to properly reflect to the other side. So now, if I turn off my guides and come out, I have the same eyebrow on both sides. And I like how this looks a little better. Now, you'll also notice I haven't put any pupils in, so we're going to drop some pupils in there real quick using some circles. So L key on your keyboard, and then we can just click, Alt drag that object over to the other eye, and now you have eyes. So this, so far, we have our hairline, which we're going to adjust in a little bit. We have our eyes, the nose, and a slit for the mouth. We haven't made the actual lips for the mouth yet, but that's what we're going to start to do now. So let's look at Dracula's mouth. Over here we notice that it's very curved and the color is dark. So we're going to keep our lip area either completely black, or we're going to use a very thick stroke, an inside stroke, so that way the color remains the same. It doesn't look like it's just a stroke and it's just getting larger. So let's switch this around. We're going to come here. Let's go over here and make almost a trapezoid shape. And then we're going to come underneath and curve. Hold the Shift key, get to another point and pull the curve out. And then connect to the top part. Now for this top portion, we want to cut down so that we have the proper canal from the nose to the lip. So we're going to use a circle, similar to how we did with Frankenstein, and drop that above the top lip. And then we're going to use our Pathfinder tool, and we're going to minus the front, and that will give us the top lip. Now, we can take this off and get rid of the line that we were using before that was behind, or we can put the lips behind that line, expand that line, and then use that to subtract from the actual lips themselves, and you can give him an open mouth expression. But I want to keep it where it's just the lips, so I'm going to get rid of the line itself. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to create the nose. And I'm going to change the stroke to an actual fill, and then I'm going to connect these 2 points. And I want to make sure that they're leveled and even with each other, so I'm going to select those endpoints, align to selection, and then click the top. So that way everything is leveled out. And let's just make sure this is on the center point right here, and we're going to drag this point out just a little bit more to even it out. Let's zoom out. Now, his nose is angled down, but he does have a very long bridge to his nose. So what I'm going to do is lower the nose just a little bit. That's going to give him a more angled appearance, and I'm going to give him very, very slight indicators for the bridge of his nose, just like we did with Frankenstein. So we're going to go here, and we're going to make those connect almost to where they work into the eyebrow ridge, which is how anatomy actually goes. So let's get another one. Let's pull it here. Then we're going to select these two, change them to strokes because mine were set to fill. And we are going to change them so that they angle just like this. And we're going to reduce those to a half of 1 stroke point weight. So now we can use our warp tool with Shift and R on the keyboard, zoom in, and we can start to adjust this to make it look like a nose. And I'm going to reduce the size of this warp tool. And I'm going to start to push the areas in on this so that it looks like nostrils. Now again, I'm not keeping with the whole symmetry aspect. I'm pulling this out a little bit more so that it looks a little bit organic. The whole thing doesn't have to look so symmetrical, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing at this point right now. So you can fiddle around with this for a little bit till you get something that's more along the lines of what you want. And then when you're happy with it, you can click off and look and see how that actually looks. So for now, I don't like how rough these curves are, so I'm going to go and get my smooth tool, which is under your pencil tool options, and I'm going to smooth these edges out so that they're more along the curved line that I want them to be and not so rough in terms of appearance. And then I'm going to get the convert anchor point tool and kind of change this anchor point to a curve so that it's less choppy. I'm going to increase this size so that they touch the points on the nose, and then click off, zoom out, and I'm more happy with how that actual nose looks. Now, I didn't want to give the very open-eyed hypnotic effect. It's not what I wanted to go with for this one. I wanted to keep Dracula very, very slim and keep his appearance that way. Now, the last thing I want to add, just to add before we go into more details, is his cape's collar. And we're going to basically use another triangle, well, a triangle for the first time this time, and we're going to place that behind him to represent the cape. And then we're going to adjust how that actually curves behind his head. So let's go down and select the polygon tool. And we're going to click and drag out. And we're going to press the down arrow key to get 3. And then we're going to hold the shift key to constrain it in the middle. Let's align it to the center of the artboard. Then we are going to rotate this. We're going to switch it to a stroke, change the level to, let's say, 10. Let's bump it up just a little bit. And we're going to bring it all the way down here. Now his collar, let's take a look, usually comes up right to around the bridge of his nose. So we're going to leave the collar to be around here. And then let's make it a little bit bigger so that way it comes out a little more on the sides. And we're going to cut this right at his chin line. So we're going to create a rectangle, drag that rectangle on top of that triangle, and then we're going to clip that shape so that it's here. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to get rid of the piece that's going in the back because we're only using strokes right now, no fills. So we're going to put this in front of our new trapezoid, and then we're going to clip that so that way it's just behind his head. Then, as you can see, these two are now grouped together. We're going to Command-Shift-G to ungroup them. And then select each one, put an anchor point in the middle, drag down a guide so that we know exactly where their anchor point is, and we can do it on the other side. Hit Command or Control R to turn your rulers on or off if you didn't have them on, and then Command or Control semicolon to get your guides to show up. And then I'm going to place another guide over here on this one. I'm going to use the Convert Anchor Point tool, drag these lines up so that way the handle touches this part of this guide. Same thing for this one. And you have to be wary of which direction you're dragging your anchor point in, because on the right side they go up and on the left side they go down, so you have to be careful. And then I'm just going to push this in a couple of spaces, and the same thing for the anchor point on the other side. So that way it marks his collar a little bit better. And now this is starting to look a little bit more like Dracula. So I want to take away the super sharp angle that's on his hairline, and I'm going to get the Convert Anchor Point tool, and I'm going to drag out just to curve it, and I'm going to do the same thing for the top points as well. Again, throwing away all the symmetry requirements and just going with what we feel looks right and where it should be. So now we can click out of that, come back out, and we'll notice the rounded hairline. And now we can start to, if we want to keep a younger Dracula, we can keep the Dracula looking the way he is, or we can start adding some lines to him to accentuate age. So we're going to add some smile lines, changing their profile. And let's change their width. And then we can also come in and give him some lines that represent his eyebrow furrow. So we're going to go here, click, make sure these lines go into the eyebrow. We're going to change the size of these lines and change the width profile to something that makes them come from a larger stroke point to a smaller one. And on my profile, I selected width profile 4. Okay. Now, you can make your own custom profiles, and I speak about that in the pen tutorial as well as pencils. So that way you know how to create your own profiles if some profile I'm using is not available to you. Now, I'm also going to change just a little bit the profile on this so that way we get a slightly more dynamic edge. Now, I kind of prefer, now that I'm looking at it, I think I kind of prefer the way the nose was before, so I'm just going to get rid of this. And I'm actually going to make it a little bit more narrow. And I'm going to overall bring these two lines in a little bit more. bring their endpoints in a little bit more as well. And then add the line segment how I had it previously. And change the width profile and increase the size just a little bit. I'm going to grab these two endpoints of both objects and bring them out just a little on each side, and then leave those like that. I actually prefer the way that nose looks just a little bit more. And I can go in and actually grab the endpoints just to make it look more like a nose and give it that shape. So let's click and grab these. Again, symmetry at this point because we are just making the shapes. You don't have to worry too much about it, but I prefer this nose a little bit better than the other nose that we were using. So I'm going to pull these 2 points up. Let's actually zoom in close and make sure I'm grabbing them. So this one and this one. Make sure we don't have the nose selected. Just drag those points up, just so they're not fully connected, but insinuate that they're connected to the nose. And then I do want these lines to be at the same height, so I'm going to make sure they are aligned properly. I'm going to bring this line and this line just downward a little bit because I don't like how high up they were coming. And then bring the bottom portion in some more and zoom out a bit. So now we have more of the Dracula feel to our piece. The next thing I do want to do is I notice there are slight lines that are coming from his eyes, and we're still going to add some more forehead lines to this piece, but let's just add a couple of lines that are coming from the eyes. Round those out, add some weight to them, and let's see what it looks like if we add a little more weight there. There we go. And I want, because he is a slim character, I want his cheekbones to be defined. So I'm going to actually click to make a larger cheekbone definition with a line segment that comes out from the side of the overall shape silhouette for his face. So I'm going to grab that one. I'm going to duplicate it. Let me select my guides and turn them on. And then I'm going to flip this to this side and bring it out just a little bit more. And now I like the appearance of this Dracula much better. If you want to make him look even more sinister, we can grab this point. We can bring it down a little more to the center of his head. And now I think I want them at the same height. So I'm going to grab the peaks of his hair and make sure they're aligned at the same height. Always make sure to save your work while you're doing stuff. So I command and control S frequently. You may not see it because this is a smaller file size, but I will do it almost instinctively while I'm working. Now that we have all the features, we have the angled face, we have cheekbones, we have the hair. Now for the hair, we're actually going to color that in black. Now as is, this isn't set with the color, so we're just going to put a shape that's in line with this. There are easy ways to do it, and I would go through that now, but we're just going to do a quick way, which is not the cleanest way, but it is a quick way to do it. We're just going to go around the shape that's there. I'm going to use my pen tool. You can use a brush if you want. You can use a pencil tool, but I'm just using the pen tool so I can get it over with really quickly. And then connect and change it to a fill, and now his hair is black. So we have that area that's black. I also want his cape to be black, so I'm going to select those and change those to a fill. And now it looks even more like Dracula. If you want, and you want to express it even further, you can grab this portion of his chin. You can put an anchor point in the middle there. Select those three to make sure it's centered. Align to selection, distribute to the middle. And then we can pull this down a little bit. And then Shift C and curve it just a little bit to give even more of an angled face. Is oddly enough, if we were to add horns to this guy, he's probably going to look like Maleficent, which is oddly funny. But anyway, so we have the space that's here for the chin, and if we want, we can add the dimple that we see in this particular illustration. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little line to represent the canal from the nose to the lip. Let's actually add the full canal and represent it like that, and reduce the stroke to 1. Let's change the profile, and then we can back out of that. And then let's also give him a small dimple. We're going to use the ellipse key, give that to him in the center of his chin, and we have a Dracula. Now, I also wanted to add, as I said before, more of these lines for the eyebrow. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add just a couple of them. And we're going to make them the same profile. And if it's not the right orientation, you can always flip it along the axis, the y-axis. And then the same thing on this side. And we're going to change the size of these 2 strokes that we're just adding. And let's say we go to 0.5, so that way they're smaller. And bring this one inward, bring this one over. Same thing for this. And then I do want to represent the thickness of the eyebrow. Also give it a more sinister look. And again, this doesn't have to be symmetrical because you want some form of variation in the piece. And we're going to make sure that we get all of these. Deselect the face, change the width profile, maybe change to 0.5. We can increase the size of these 2 to 1, this to 0.75, and let's say we even make this one a little thicker. Actually, I'll bring that down to 1, and I'll make this one a little thicker as well as this one. Don't mind the silence, I was just adjusting some stuff. Also, I'm going to bring in some lines just here. Just to represent the indent that's usually on the side of the eye. And then we can come out and take a look at this. I'm going to change this to a fill. And we have a Dracula. Now, if you wanted, we can do like we did with our Frankenstein. And we can start to add some shading to make this look a little more dynamic and not so flat. So I'm just going to add some shadowed areas to the overall shape, and just that way it'll look a little better in terms of it being dynamic compared to what we originally just created. So, and you don't have to be organic with how your lines look. You can make them look any particular way that you want. Let's say we go in here, we want some shadow over here. Let's see. Let's go like this, then like this. Bring the shadow here. Also want it here, here. I'm gonna bring that up to the top of the eyebrow ridge. And you gotta be careful also when you're doing this to make sure you're not clipping or touching any other anchor points, because they will attach to what you're doing, and it will make life a heck of a lot more difficult when you're developing something like this. So you do have to be careful and wary of where you're putting your lines. And I'm gonna add one more set just to connect to the mouth area. And we're gonna put that in here. Yep. And just a little shadow under the nose. And we have a Dracula. Now what you can do, and what I'm going to do right now, is I don't want it to take away from the full presence of his lip. So I'm going to leave a little bit of that open so we can see the top of the lip, but we know that the shadow is still there. And if you want, you can also make smaller shadows on other parts of the face just to add some depth to the other side. Now I want this to come back into the eyebrow. I'm going to grab this pen tool again and just make a small shadow set over here in the indent where the nose meets the eyebrow ridge. So here we go. And get out of there, change that from a stroke to a fill. And I will make a little one right here by this side of the nose and the cheek indent where the smile line is, and then leave that there for our Dracula. So now we have more form and shape to the actual face itself. And if we keep going, what we're going to do is reduce this just a little bit, so that way we can still tell it's not a part of the mouth. Lift it up just a little. And again, we have to be sure that we are saving our work. So I'm going to save it. And now we can move forward over here. And I want to change this to a solid shape and change it to a fill. And then save my work. Now, I'm going to leave this here, but I know you may want to represent this as more of a Dracula. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and pull it closer to the hairline so we can still see that angle. And then I'm going to make two white fangs, which are going to come out of the mouth. And the way we can do that is we can create a triangle. So we're going to go over to our shape tool and polygon. We already made a triangle earlier, so it should still be there. We're actually going to change this color to white. And we are going to flip it upside down. We're going to reduce the actual size of it. Drag this over. And let's slim it just a little bit. And we're going to round out, even though the teeth are very, very sharp, let's round out that corner point just a little bit so it's not as sharp. And then we're going to add an anchor point to the side of the tooth, because this is going to be the left tooth and we are going to push that in just a little bit. Actually, you can click and drag it in so it doesn't go in too much. And then to represent the lip being over it, what I want to do is I want to make a curve that cuts off the top of the actual tooth. And we can change this shape to black so that we can see what it looks like if it was covering it. And then we're going to remove that shape from the top of that tooth. Turn our guide back on. We're going to hit the O key. Make sure that we reflect across the middle guide that we created. And then we'll leave our two fangs there. Turn our guides off and zoom out. And now we have our Dracula with two fangs sticking out. And that's pretty much it for the tutorial. What I normally like to do is create a really, really thick black stroke around it, but I'm actually content with the stroke that's around this, and it will flush very well with the Frankenstein character that we created. So I want you guys to stay tuned. Take this stuff, practice it. If you're not familiar with the tools, go back and check out the tool tutorials, but take this information and practice this on your own time. And what you're going to notice is that we're going to take what we learned in our last one as well as this one, and then we're going to create something unique in our next one. I may have a few more things added, but we won't go over those, but they may be in the next tutorial. Essentially, you would be following along the same way you did with the last one and with this one as well, and then we're just going to put all of that knowledge together to create something good for the holiday season. All right, so thanks again, guys, for following and sticking with me through the tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care.